The year is 1830. France, a nation with a history of colonial endeavors, sets its sights on Algeria. This North African territory, with its strategic location and potential riches, becomes a prime target. The French invasion begins a new chapter in the story of both nations. It is a story marked by conquest, resistance, and ultimately a struggle for independence. The French government sought to bolster its waning prestige after a series of political upheavals. Algeria, with its fertile lands and proximity to Europe, represented an opportunity for economic expansion. The invasion itself was swift and brutal. French forces met with fierce resistance from local tribes, but their superior weaponry and tactics ultimately prevailed. The fall of Algiers marked the beginning of French rule in Algeria, a period that would last for over a century. In the face of French aggression, a figure of resistance emerged: Abd al-Qadir. A charismatic religious and military leader, Abd al-Qadir united disparate Algerian tribes against the common enemy. His leadership proved instrumental in galvanizing the resistance movement. He instilled a sense of national identity and purpose in the hearts of the Algerian people. Abd al-Qadir's forces, highly mobile and well-versed in the terrain, harassed French troops and supply lines. Despite his valiant efforts, Abd al-Qadir was eventually captured in 1847. His capture, though a significant blow to the resistance movement, did not extinguish the flames of Algerian defiance. Abd al-Qadir's struggle became a potent symbol of Algerian resistance, inspiring future generations to fight for their freedom. With their resistance quelled, France embarked on a policy of settler colonialism. European settlers, primarily from France, but also from other parts of the Mediterranean, were encouraged to migrate to Algeria. They were offered land confiscated from native Algerians, often under very favorable terms. This influx of settlers had a profound impact on the social, economic, and demographic landscape of Algeria. Native populations were forced off their ancestral lands, their traditional ways of life disrupted. The French administration implemented policies designed to assimilate the Algerian population into French culture. Arabic, the language spoken by the majority of Algerians, was sidelined in favor of French. The inequalities inherent in the settler colonial system fueled growing discontent among the Algerian populace. The seeds of resentment sown during this period would eventually blossom into a full-fledged struggle for independence. The two world wars of the 20th century would prove to be pivotal turning points in the history of French-Algerian relations. Algerians, like many other colonized peoples, were drawn into the conflicts of their European overlords. They served in the French army, fighting in distant lands for a colonial power that denied them basic rights at home. World War I exposed the contradictions inherent in the French colonial project. Algerian soldiers fighting for liberty and democracy in Europe returned home to a reality of continued oppression and inequality. Their experiences during the war, coupled with the rise of nationalist sentiments globally, fueled the growth of Algerian nationalism. The simmering tensions between France and Algeria finally erupted in 1954 with the outbreak of the Algerian War of Independence. The war, which would last for 8 long years, was a brutal and bloody conflict that left an indelible mark on both nations. The Algerian National Liberation Front, formed in 1954, launched a guerrilla war against French forces and their allies. The FLN's strategy centered on waging a war of attrition, targeting French military installations, government buildings, and symbols of French authority. The French response to the FLN's insurgency was swift and brutal. Torture, mass arrests, and the forced relocation of civilian populations became commonplace as the French government sought to break the back of the FLN. The war for Algerian independence was not confined to the battlefields of Algeria. It spilled over into France itself, dividing French society and sparking fierce debates about colonialism, racism, and national identity. After years of bitter fighting and countless lives lost, France finally granted Algeria independence in 1962. The Evian Accords, signed in March 1962, paved the way for a ceasefire and the withdrawal of French forces from Algeria. The legacy of French colonialism continues to cast a long shadow over both France and Algeria. The Algerian War of Independence was a watershed moment in the history of decolonization, marking the end of the French Empire and inspiring other colonized peoples fighting for their freedom. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Emgotvhistory for more fascinating historical narratives.